Everyone, Michelle Nolan here from MarketSharp. At this time, I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's SharpSkill webcast. And since it is the top of the hour, let's go ahead and get started. To kick things off, I'd like to review today's agenda, and then we'll turn things over to Romy. So welcome, everybody, to our SharpSkill webcast on employee permissions and security. Today's session agenda is going to be, what are employee permissions? Why do we focus on employee permissions? How to access employee permissions. So we're going to look through the different types of permissions that you'll see within the admin area, and then also managing new hire permissions. In addition to that, we'll have an FAQ session, and then I want to just let you know that we are pretty much redirecting some of our live questions on today's session to technical support. So really what that means is if you do have a question in regard to permissions, certainly send a note within the Q&A window, and then support will reach out to you later today. Or you can always just give us a call if you have an immediate questions, and there's different ways to contact support. You can email us at support@marketsharp.com. You can certainly give us a call at 1-800-596-4368, or you can chat with us live at www.marketsharp.com/help. And always remember, we are recording this session, so you can watch them at a later time. All right. So to kick things off, I'd like to introduce Romy Pulowski. Romy's been with MarketSharp for a couple of years, and she is our onboarding coordinator. So she'll be guiding us through permissions and access to them. So here you go, Romy.
Hello, everyone. So yes, again, my name is Romy. Today, the first thing we're going to go over are what are employee permissions? Well, simply said, employee permissions are how you control what access an employee has to your database and how much access that they have. So it's how you as a system administrator protect your data and your company as a whole. Now, permissions are initially given to a user account when an employee type is assigned. So where you will see that in employee maintenance is over here in the types column for employees that are already created. And when creating a new employee, you'll see it in these check marks here. Now, what permissions are assigned by an employee type? They are many, and we'll be going over the different types of permissions in today's webinar. But if you do want a synopsis of what permissions are assigned, there is a handy permissions guide to the left of the employee types here, and that is available also in the handouts for today's webinar. Now, this is a very expansive and detailed document. I'm not expecting you to learn this document, no one is, but it is nice, a little handy guide if you have individual questions about what is assigned to whom. So that's available at your disposal. Now, why focus on employee permissions? Why are we doing today's webinar? Well, first off, having set employee permissions that you are set in will give you a peace of mind through database security. So what that means is, usually the first thing that comes to mind with permissions is it makes sure your database and your data is secure, making sure the right people can access the right items and can modify them as needed. Now, the next item is it gives your users more focus, enhancing their productivity. Now, what that means is, as you may have noticed, MarketSharp is vast. It has a lot of different functionality. It can do a lot. This can sometimes overwhelm employees because they think they need to access all items, use all tools. That may not necessarily be pertinent to their job role. By having permissions active, you can focus their attention on the items that pertain specifically to their job role, enhancing their productivity. And the last item kind of dabbles into that first item, increasing reporting and data integrity. What that means is that by having the right people accessing the correct areas of the database and kind of minimizing the hands in the pot, you increase the integrity of the data that's input and housed within your database, making reporting more efficient. Now, how to access employee permissions. Now, just as a little disclaimer, because permissions do tie into database security and data integrity, this is a higher level permission. You may not necessarily have access to some of the areas that I'm going to go over today. If you do not have access, I am going to refer you at this time to a system administrator within your company so they can give you access. Step one, to access permissions is to go to the admin section. This is available in the top right area of your database, kind of where it says log out in my account or help. So you'll first click on the admin link here, present, and then that will take you to the admin area where there's a bunch of different tiles for the different areas of admin. The one we are going to specifically look at is employee setup, specifically employee maintenance. Employee maintenance is where all your separate employee profiles are listed. Now, to access a specific employee's permissions, you're going to click the key to the left of the employee's name. Now, this will take you to the individual permissions within that particular employee. Now, permissions come in a variety of functions and styles. The first ones today we're going to look at are feature permissions. These are which functions within MarketSharp an employee has access to and how much access does they have to those features. Now, you can modify whether items can be viewed, edited, deleted, or exported from MarketSharp. Anytime there is a plus sign over on the left here, that means that this list can be expanded into more subgroups and more additional permissions. So just as an example of how these columns over here can work in conjunction with each other, let's say you had an employee that you wanted to be able to see notes, but not modify them in any way. Like we have set up here, you would have view checked and edit and delete unchecked. Now you'll notice when logging in that there are a whole bunch of feature permissions with a whole bunch of check marks. If you ever can't quite get permissions to lay the way you want, or if you're not quite sure where to start, because this is a lot of check marks, do not hesitate to call technical support. We're very familiar with all the check marks back here and can help you set up any configuration that you need. That's not a problem at all. Now, there are two permissions that I want you as system admins to make sure the right employees have them. Make sure they have access to them because they are more powerful permissions. And that is the editable drop-down list permission and access to employee maintenance. Editable drop-down lists are how you morph MarketSharp to fit your internal language and your internal vocabulary. Some examples would be product interest and appointment type, appointment result, activity result. These have been set by system administrators, and sometimes they do need to be modified because a particular situation comes up. For lead source, you go to a new home show, so you need to add the new home show there. Or maybe you have a new integration, a new web integration that you want to add, so you need to get that added in there. Or you start offering a new product. The reason you want to keep fewer hands in that pot is because you want everyone to stay on the same page. And once those are set, you want them to be set. You don't necessarily want them played with a whole bunch because that's the language you use, that's the terminology you use. So editable drop-down permission is how you control that. Now, in the admin permissions, we have employee maintenance. This gives the employee access to everything that we're discussing today. So it gives them the ability to modify permissions for every single employee within your database. That's including other system administrators and including their own. So it's kind of like a master key to the back door. If they don't have access, they can give other employees and themselves access. It also gives an employee the ability to modify any passwords within the database. So very high level permission. So because of that, you are going to want to make sure the right employees have access. Now, like I said earlier, employee types set some initial permissions. These are not given out willy-nilly. There are very specific employee types that have them. I believe it's management, system administrator, and MarketSharp operator. So the industry standard is set, but it is something you're going to want to take into account if you haven't maybe taken a look at that in a while. Next permissions we have are list permissions. These control which drop-downs an employee will be present, and you're essentially giving them permission to be defined as a particular job role. Checked means that they are present in the dropdown and can be assigned. The example I have shown here is salesperson. So this person has salesperson and salesperson 2 checked, so they are present in the salesperson dropdown and can be assigned to an appointment. Unchecked means that they are not, keeping the dropdown tidy. This person is not a project manager. They are not going out on installs, so they do not need to be in the project manager dropdown, cluttering up that dropdown. So if you have a situation where an employee is supposed to be in a dropdown and is not, list permissions are what you are to look at. Next permissions we have are field permissions. These are permissions that pertain specifically to employees that are restricted to a mobile-only access. So this is a cherry picking or a pre-qualifying tool. Let's say you schedule an appointment a couple of weeks out, but you don't want your employee to know how to contact that lead, because if they know how to contact that lead, they're going to spend the entire interim time emailing them, looking them up, looking at the home, seeing what they think. And if they don't like what they see, they're not going to commit to the appointment. And you don't want that. You want them to just go to the appointment because they've been assigned that lead. You can hide some contact information from them. Or if you have employees that treat leads differently, if they come from a particular lead source, like a referral that's not their own referral, or a home show that hasn't performed well in the past, you can hide lead source information so they treat all leads as doesn't matter, it's been assigned to you. But again, these are permissions that only work if an employee is restricted to mobile-only access. If they are active and they are not restricted to mobile-only, when they log into the desktop version, they will see these items. Next permissions we have are contact permissions. These control which contacts an employee can view within the database. You can make it so an employee has blanket access and they can access every single contact within the database, no exceptions. But you can also make it so that they can only access contact data if they are assigned to the contact in a particular way. If they are the designated salesperson, if they are the project manager on the install, if they were the person who scheduled the appointment on the calendar. If the contact does not meet that criteria, that contact is invisible to that employee. It's like they've never been in the database before. This does two of our objectives. This helps maintain security with your database so employees aren't looking around at data that they don't need to, but it also hammers home that focus item that we talked about earlier so that they just focus on their own leads and they don't worry about anything else. Appointment permissions is another tool that helps with employees that pre-qualify leads. So back to my earlier example, let's say you schedule an appointment a couple of weeks out, but you want to go a little bit further than just hiding contact information. You want to make it so that they don't even know that appointment exists until the day before. You can set up your MarketSharp so that the appointment is hidden from the salesperson until you tell MarketSharp that that employee is now allowed to see it. And that's by utilizing the date issued field in the appointment area. So by activating this appointment, the appointment is hidden or locked away from the employee until this date has occurred or is in the past. Next, we have dashboard permissions. These control which charts and graphs in that vary from page that when you log in, that employee can see. Checked means they can see it. Unchecked means they cannot. This is more of a focus item. If you have a part-time employee that doesn't need to know company totals, doesn't need to know how the sales guys are doing, or if you have you maybe calculate your closing ratio differently than how the dashboard does, so you're not going to worry about the salesperson closing ratios graph. You can hide that information so that people don't need to worry about it. So let's say after this webinar, we go back, we review all our permissions, we get everything set the way we want, we check and uncheck, recheck, everything looks good, everything looks great. And then a couple months down the road, we hire a new employee, and we want to make sure that their permissions are lined up as well. Not a problem. MarketSharp does have a tool called permission cloning. So this is designed for initial setup of databases, but it's also a really handy tool for new hires. what you'll do is you'll create that new employee in employee maintenance, and you'll click on their key. And in the top right, there is a cloning permissions function. So in this case, Jack Smith is a new salesperson. What we would do is we would click on his key, click on this drop down here, select another salesperson from that drop down. What that will do is it'll check and uncheck all the permissions to match, check, 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 recheck. Then we click save, and now their permissions are cloned to each other. So you have assurance that Jack's permissions now match Joe's. And again, helpful tip, don't forget to save. It's very important. Now, the most frequently asked question, permission question that comes back to technical support is, how do I make it so an employee or a salesperson can only see their own appointments? That is easily, by far, the most common question that comes back to technical support, because it comes back to that focus area as well as data integrity. Well, the first thing that you are going to want to do is go to feature permissions, and you're going to want to drop down calendar tab, drop down resource groups, and uncheck all these resource groups here. Now, this might seem like what we're doing is turning off the calendar. We're not. What you'll notice in the calendar tab is that every employee has access to 3 calendars. That is the sales calendar, the production and service calendar, and my calendar. Now, obviously, sales calendar is all the sales appointments within your company. The production and service calendar is all production and service appointments within your company. My calendar is the events of the salesperson or the employee that is currently logged in. By unchecking all the resource groups, what it does is it removes the sales calendar and the production calendar, making it so the only calendar they can see is my calendar. So that's the first step, making it so the only calendar they see is my calendar. The next step is by double checking and making sure that they can only see contacts that are assigned to themselves. This makes it so they can only see their own data in other areas of the database as well, besides the calendar. So, final questions that usually come up when we talk about permissions is, so who should be able to control the permissions within my company and my MarketSharp? Well, that's really up to you. There is no right or wrong answer. Every company is different. Every company functions differently. What I can tell you is that you don't want it to be everyone, but you definitely need enough people that are accessible. An example would be, let's say an employee forgets their password, or they didn't realize that their job role has expanded and they don't have access to a particular area in the database that they need. If it's only 1 or 2 people and neither of them are available, whether they're out on an appointment, out on a job, just out of the office for a moment, unavailable, you want to have it so that it's accessible to your employees. But again, for data integrity, we don't necessarily want it to be everybody for obvious reasons. So, how should my own employees be set up is the next question. That's another area where I am actually going to have to defer to you. Because again, every company runs differently. What I can assure you of is that employee types, those check marks, are set to industry standard, so they are a great starting point. But every company has different processes and different people. You'll probably even have individual employees within the same job role that should have different access, like a salesperson and maybe a salesperson plus, or a salesperson and a new salesperson that still needs to learn the ropes. So that really is up to you. But what I can assure you with is that whatever setup that you need, MarketSharp technical support is available to you. This is one of our most common phone calls. I cannot stress that enough. Do not hesitate to call technical support. If that question takes a minute, it takes a minute. It takes an hour, it takes an hour. No problem. So that's really all that I have for you today. Like I said, we have the handouts available in the handout area. Michelle, is there anything that you wanted to add, or did you have any questions?
You know, that was great, Romy. It really does prove why permissions are critical for your peace of mind, for productivity, and for your data integrity. And a question did come in that I just wanted to maybe share with everybody about, you know, what's a good rebuttal if somebody says, why can't I edit this, or why can't I see this information? And to me, I think I would just simply state that, you know, to keep our data clean and in the proper means that it needs to be, you know, we've allowed people to only see, edit, or maybe have delete permissions. And I think that's just a policy that you should have within your business, because you want to make sure that the information you're putting in it is there so that you can actually get the reports and things like that that you need from it. So you don't want to clutter your data. I think that's all that needs to be said to make sure that it stays secured and that data is entered properly.
Absolutely, I would agree with that.
But yeah, I really don't have anything else to add. That was great content. If you do have more questions, certainly about permissions, like Romy stated, definitely reach out to the support department. They're there to help you with anything that they possibly can pertaining to MarketSharp. And this is one of the areas that you do want to make sure that you do have set up properly. So certainly reach out by phone, email, or even if you'd like to chat with them at help.marketsharp.com. So that kind of concludes the session today. Anything else you'd like to add, Romy?
Nope, just thank you everyone for your time, and we appreciate it.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great day, and certainly reach out to us if you need any more assistance. Bye now.